get a lead?
Okay, item 2, public hearing on new development and city projects.
So, this is Mr. Brent's thing. If we could go by who was first on stage.
Yeah,
Justin, good to see you.
yeah. 3 of us were conflicted out,
Oh, okay.
so
We have a
those
quorum.
2 left, and I
So-
got chosen to stay, so.
I would just note that the reason that Mr. Williams is staying instead of Mr. Brent's is that his name was drawn first out of the magic box here.
Right.
And so he is the lucky one who gets to stay.
Okay, so can we hear a staff report on this item?
Thank you, Chair Williams and Planning Commissioners. Brenda Messer, Assistant Planner, City of Solvang. Tonight we are hearing a hearing on the request of Ms. Stacy Oti from the Wildling Museum for the approval of a conditional use permit to install a roof-mounted photovoltaic system on the roof of the existing building at 1511 Mission Drive. As stated in your staff report, the conditional use permits required under zoning ordinance 111213. One of the reasons this is a major conditional use permit in the TRC is for there could be negative impacts on the buildings and the look of the Danish buildings with the PV systems located on those roofs. This application is special because of the height of the building. The photovoltaic system will be in a roof well that is completely screened. It cannot be seen from the street in any capacity. We did not hold a DRC meeting for this project, for the minimal project that it is. The only people that needed to review it was planning staff and the fire department, and the fire department had no comments on that. We didn't require BAR approval since it's not visible from the street. This CUP has approved or has findings that are listed in your staff report. This is exempt from any CEQA requirements, and it's a pretty easy project. It will require a building permit after Planning Commission approval, and they will need to adhere to all of the conditions of approval. And Ms. Stacy Oti is here if you have any questions. She's from the Wildling. And that concludes my staff report if you have any questions.
Scott, any questions? Justin? Stacy, do you want to say anything?
I don't have to.
Well, I thought you might like to. You don't. Again, you don't have to. Just state your name.
Like you're going to be here too late anyway. So, yes, Stacy Adi Demangate from the Wildling. We're doing this project in conjunction with CEC of Santa Barbara. It's a special project just for nonprofits and certain kinds of nonprofits. And our nature of mission being, supporting the environment and education about the environment through art. We're a good fit for them and their funder. And so they were very excited that we wanted to do this. Thankfully, the roof is such that it's no impact on anybody and will let us use up less carbon and should provide, it's somewhere between 80 to 90% of the energy needs of the museum. It's not for the entire building because it's actually the museum itself working with CEC for that. So, and then in about 7 years through this monthly payment, which will be a little bit more than we normally pay for electric, we will have essentially purchased the system and then it's ours. So it's the only way we can afford to do a project like this is in conjunction with them. So we're not having a huge outlay of cash up front, which we would not be able to do. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Just one. I didn't see in here if you had any battery backup. Is this just going to be a daylight
I think it's just daylight driven, so it will be, it'll fluctuate. If we have a really cloudy year, we're not going to get as much juice out of it, and if we have a really sunny year, we'll be cruising. So yeah.
You would use
we're still using
to run your building,
not independently of the overall energy grid, if you know what I mean. So we're kind of sending it to the grid, and then we're if that makes sense. We're not completely off-grid by using this system.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
It's not visible from the street. It's just going to be completely on the
No,
rooftop.
the building's really deceptive if you just look at it, because there's this intense pitch roof, and it looks like, wow, that's the roof, but in fact, that's false. It's basically a facade kind of roof, and so the roof is even below that.
No questions. Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll thank you for taking the green approach, and I will make a motion to approve the Wilding Museum roof-mounted system.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Vote, yes? No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aye, yeah. Approved, 3-0.
Thank you very
Stacy.
much.
Okay. Now we can get the rest of our staff back in here. Oh, go get them. Oh, David got them. It was easy, we turned her down. Okay, item 2B, amendment to the sign regulations. Brenda,
Thank you, Chair Williams. Planning Commissioners, Brenda Messer, City of Solvang. This is the review and discussion and hopefully the approval of the zoning ordinance amendment to the sign regulations. Instead of just going through the staff report, with the background, I believe we all have a pretty good background of the sign ordinance and how many times we've been reviewing it back and forth. The last Planning Commission recommendation was to return the approval process, review and approval process back to the Board of Architectural Review. We have changed those items along with the other items that were approved by the Planning Commission previously. Going through the ordinance again, there was several areas that needed some updating, and we included to ask the Planning Commission for their recommendation for staff to approve window signs, relocated signs, chalkboard signs, awning signs, things that aren't put into the BAR packet, and then the applicant realizes, oh gosh, I wish I would have put that in my packet. Staff, can you do this at the counter? And we've seen that a handful of times. Other revisions were talking about ground signs. I know it's been very confusing on how to estimate that, where to measure the 6'6" height limit. Is it from the planter? Is it from the right-of-way, the sidewalk right-of-way? So to simplify the code, we've added that it should just be measured simply from the sidewalk right-of-way, and then the height limit would be 6'6". I know I've met with Aaron and I've met with Jack several times about other items that they would like to see changed in the ordinance, things that were missed. And again, I'm here for questions. I know that there's going to be some heavy discussion, so I'm going to put that back into your hands. Thank you.
okay. So does anybody want to speak on this topic before we get into it? Okay. So, any questions, concerns, issues that anybody wants to bring up? Justin?
Brenda just mentioned that you and Aaron had gone into asked for changes. Just wanted to know what you guys had. Okay.
Sometime during the meeting. David, do you have anything that you,
No.
questions?
Not right
Scott?
Well,
Aaron.
I mean, I apologize. I've got a few more inconsistencies that I found, but that, I mean, you know, you can nitpick. But if we're going to do that, is this the right time to do it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna make one statement and this is a general, not a change, because we're not gonna probably make that change tonight, but under the page 2 of what we have, and under 1113-2, purpose and intent. So now we go to page 2 of it, and we go down to D. And D.
This is attachment D you're talking
no,
about?
the D of the only, yes,
Right,
attachment D, yeah.
Okay.
And this is D on page 2. And this is just a general statement, then I'll get more specific, is enable fair and consistent enforcement of these sign regulations. And that's under the whole purpose and intent of this ordinance. And I know city council has come out with a few, we don't want to enforce it unless it's complaint driven. We used to have a sign ordinance person way back when that went around and did things, then it was complaint driven, then it went back to a sign enforcement person or code enforcement, but signs were one of them. And I'm just making a statement that I need to probably go to city council on this. I feel emphatic that it should not be complaint driven. I don't understand why we have an ordinance that says to enable fair and consistent enforcement, and then it's complaint driven. The purpose is to be consistent. Complaint driven means that we're like Nazi Germany turning in Jewish neighbors. If your neighbor doesn't turn you in, then you don't have to comply. But if you don't like the person you comply, you can turn them in, but you have to sign it. You don't have to sign it. It makes everyone anonymous. It makes everyone not anonymous. It makes everybody evil, political, and I think it's terrible. I think, and we don't do that with cops. We don't say someone's speeding, go give them a ticket. We have cops that patrol. We hire this person to do code enforcement. One of the code enforcements that we have is RVs in a public wherever and parking overnight, but one of them that we have in the city of Solvang is sign ordinance. And I totally disagree, and I've heard rumors that that's the city council's kind of position. We're only going to enforce it when it's complaint driven. And I think it's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong. It sets us up for irritation in the city. Blanketed statement. Next, to the individual ones. And again, it's in our purpose, which is to be consistent, not complaint driven, but consistent. I know that we're going to at some point look at our design guidelines, and I know that an RFP went out to do that and nobody responded, I've heard, but maybe we're going to do it at some point because we do make reference in our sign ordinance to the design guidelines and Northern European design theme as illustrated in the design guidelines, and yet we really don't have a hard and fast rule on what our Northern European design guidelines should be. I've said this before too, to me it's a cart before the horse. We can certainly clean up some of the inconsistencies, but my gosh, until we get these design guidelines of what we want, and I don't think it needs to be with an outside source we pay $50,000 to, a consultant. I think it needs to be a city-pushed design guideline review. It's part of our general plan. It would make our regulations much easier if we had design guidelines that talked about letters, Old World, New World, Old World vernacular, Northern European, Danish European. Are they raised letters? Are they not raised letters? So as a person who goes and gets a sign made, we're silent on it in our sign ordinance, yet we refer to a design guideline which hasn't been looked at since probably 1982. Hopefully we're going to get on that. And to me, it's a little cart before the horse to be doing this when we don't have that. That's a second general statement. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of going on, but now we'll get specific. I saw that you changed the fascia or the public right-of-way to edge of building, correct? And I applaud that. That's good. It makes it consistent. Perhaps a definition of edge of building, furthest protruding out, or however we want to, however you come up with a definition of edge of building, because we had a definition of fascia. We took fascia out. This is for a hanging sign, projecting signs. How far can they stick out beyond the edge of building or into a public right-of-way or into a private right-of-way? And it got changed to edge of building, which is very consistent and it's perfect, but perhaps a definition of edge of building would just be helpful. Edge of building on the side that the street is, the sign is hanging from, second floor, first floor, as they stick out and go. Just a little more definition would be great.
Just a question, when you say edge of building, when you say edge of building, it begs the question, you're saying a definition, but would it be from the base at ground level, or would it be from the edge of, say, an overhang on the roof? Where would you?
That's exactly my question. I don't know. We used to say facade. We never defined it either, but maybe the edge of building is the furthest edge to the public right-of-way, perhaps. I mean, I'm just trying to be as specific as we can, so when you go to hang a sign, because I'm with you, Jack, some of the buildings stick out on the second, there's a jet out or something, or it goes back, and so where is it? And again, we're trying to make it easy for us who hang signs and for the sign makers. So I like edge of building, just maybe a definition.
Okay, and we can leave it to staff to do that?
I'm absolutely
bring
fine
back?
with it. I am. This would be, we don't have page numbers, so I apologize.
Sections.
If we go section B, measurement calculations, if we turn to page, on my page 5, I believe we've got the same copy.
What section,
11, 13, 6, yes,
Item 5?
B. So we go A and then down to B.
Measurement calculations.
Correct, measurement calculations. So this is one that we've talked about before. This is under 2, and I think you made some changes but didn't catch it, measuring building frontage. But in the paragraph A, it talks still about if the property abuts 2 or more streets, only one street should be used in computing the frontage. So we're talking frontage again of street, but we're talking building frontage, I believe. I'm looking at you, Brenda, to read it and chat. Yeah, I know. Yeah, look at it, because it took me and I looked and yeah.
That was one that you and I had spoken about for quite some time. The longer building frontage shall be used in computing the footage for whether or not they can have a ground or pole sign. I know it's very confusing language, but the property, if it does abut 2 streets, it will have 1 square footage and then subordinate square footage. So they're going to end up with enough anyways, for the most part, as that's the way I'm calculating it, if somebody does want a ground sign. Does that make sense? I know it's very confusing.
No, it does. I just think we need to be a little clearer, because it says measuring building frontage, but then in computing building frontage for the purpose of determining whether a complex or center is entitled to a ground or pole sign. And if the property abuts on 2 or more streets, only 1 street should be used in computing the frontage.
Footage.
Footage, I'm sorry. So if it doesn't abut on 2 streets, then is the frontage only the frontage used on the street, or the footage is only the footage on the street? One is footage and one is frontage.
Yes. It would only be the frontage, the distance of, the number of feet of frontage of one. I think what this is trying to prevent, if I understand what Brenda has told me before, is that if you're on a corner and you have 2 frontages, you'll be allowed the longer of those 2 frontages, but it wouldn't allow somebody then to calculate both frontages for purposes of determining the complex is entitled to a ground or pole sign.
Okay.
So you can't make a mega sign because you have a lot.
Exactly. So if a property's on a corner and going one way, the building will, I'm just going to make up easy math. It's going 100 feet one way and 50 feet the other way. You're going to be able to use the 100-foot frontage only. You wouldn't be able to use 150 feet when arguably on a corner the building would have 150 feet of frontage. So this is being a bit more restrictive to the longer of those 2. In order to prevent a mega sign or a larger, or in this situation, the poles.
Completely agree. I agree with what we're saying. We're just using frontage and footage. If everyone else understands it, I'm still a little confused, but that's okay.
Fred, just follow up on what David said. Frontage is which way it's facing. Footage is the length of the frontage.
Okay.
So the frontage faces on a street.
Correct.
Then the length of that frontage is the footage that you use to make your calculations.
Correct.
So it's
If-
only for corner buildings.
Yes.
Otherwise, frontage doesn't come into a factor, only footage comes into a factor,
Precisely.
if there's only one frontage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think in,
Wait,
in,
is
in-
that
yeah.
how everyone else is following?
Yes, I believe so. So I think in hearing the comment, we can work to clarify this language if that's something that the commission would like. And I'm not going to try to make it up on the fly, but I'm understanding what you're saying, and I see where we probably could clarify this to make it a little bit more simplistic.
Yeah, I mean, the clearer the better, right?
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, absolutely. If we turn to the next section, which is then 11.13.7, so it's the next page, it starts on the chart. And again, the chart is great chart. It talks about the edge of building, great, edge of building again. Under awning signs, and I know that Brian Schneider, who owns 805 Signs, had listed this as a question, and I didn't really even catch it until I'm looking at it. Under awning signs, the letter height, maximum letter height is 5 inches for business name. We then have the letter height for descriptives 3 inches. His point, and I'm just reading from him, is why don't make them each 5 inches so that it's consistent rather than a 5 and then a 3. I would be in favor of doing 5s across the board. I don't even know if it would look that good to have 5 and then dropping to 3 when it's descriptive words. So I would like to see that just raised up to 5, but that's, again, just my personal preference.
I think it's better to have the business name, allow the business name to be larger than any descriptors that go on there. Otherwise, I think it just gets too
Wordy.
too jumbled, too wordy.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to point that out, that they're different sizes. We're all good with that, because that was a change. Okay. I bring my comment back. That's fine. Makes sense.
Isn't it better to have 2 different sizes anyway, so you're not restricting people to only one size? So if they want to have smaller, or should there be a minimum size also?
I think there was just 2 sizes
Yeah.
was probably
Yeah,
good
well,
enough.
Yeah, I think these are maximum, it says maximum height is 5. You could,
Right.
since that's the maximum, you could have something smaller if you wanted it.
Yes, maximum. Okay, that's fine. The 5 and 3 is fine with me. Turn the page on the chart to the next one. Under chalkboard changeable menu and menu display case, I know that we added, Brenda, this was your addition, which I agree with, the salon and spa can be the food, beverage, and food and beverage can have the changeable. And the menu display case, though, it seems to me like we allowed that for salons also. But maybe I'm wrong. If I thought I would catch you and you'd remember, but let me find it under the chalkboard changeable menu. So we have chalkboard changeable menu, and then we have menu. So
Menu display case.
so under a menu display case, it's only for food and beverage. But chalkboard changeable menu is salons and food and beverage. Is that, or is salon supposed, and spa supposed to be in both categories?
Commissioner Peterson, I don't recall us discussing whether menu signs would be allowed for salons and spas. I'm happy to add it if that's what you recommend. But I think it was only the chalkboard signs.
Not the menu display.
That's correct, as far as I remember.
Okay,
Okay.
and that's fine. I just wanted, because they seem pretty similar to me, and I didn't know if you'd made those changes or not.
Before you move on.
Yes, I'm sorry.
In the next section, under H menu display case, right now, the first line says menu display case. and it says food, beverage, or salon spa services behind glass or plastic. So it's in there.
So I did,
So
okay.
it's in both places.
Okay. So under menu display H, that's where I saw it inconsistent. It does say it, Brenda, but under the chart, it doesn't say it.
Just to clarify one thing in regard to the chart, I haven't updated a lot of the whether or not BAR is required or whether it's staff approval, because I wanted to wait for your recommendation before I changed it again. So some of these items do need to be updated, and I believe I spoke with Commissioner Williams about that earlier today. So just to clarify, some of these things are not revised yet.
So the question is, do we want salons to be included? They are in chalkboard. Do we want them in menu display cases? In one place it says no, but in the other place on H it says yes. And I'm fine with them in both because it seems the same to me, but it's up to everybody else.
I don't have a problem with that. It's fine with me.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think
Again,
we
it's
can put
only
it in
for
both places.
consistency. Okay, so both. So chart and on that. Okay. Does that make sense, Brenda? You know what I mean? Where were we? And then, let's see. Under J, which is, oh my gosh, it's after H, the menu display, I, umbrella signs, and then we go to J, which is ground signs, like 4 pages back from where we were. We were just chatting about this a little bit on the ground sign. The 6 foot 6 inches, you had said we're going to change that to sidewalk, not above grade. Is that what you're recommending? I mean, I agree, that's what it ought to be, but I wasn't know if I was following it or not.
That is to simplify that code section. We discussed, let's just take it 6'6" from the sidewalk.
Public sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay. I agree. And so we'll take out the 6'6" above grade and all those other things, and if it's 18 inches above, if it's further back and it can be raised, or right, all those things.
Correct.
It'll
And the
simplify it.
applicant, if they wanted to go outside of those parameters, could request the exception.
Okay.
What if there's no sidewalk nearby or?
Well, I think it probably needs to say nearest public sidewalk, but you're absolutely correct. I hadn't thought about that. If you're an interior courtyard, you're right. What's the public sidewalk a long ways away?
Right.
So,
I thought grade makes sense, whatever grade you're at, right?
So should it be finished grade and not public or private sidewalk? I know, because we got into grade, then we got into artificial grade, then we got into planter boxes, and you got into, if the artificial grade is more than 3 feet where you are, and here's the public sidewalk, then you go 6'6" from the artificial grade because it's more than 3 feet, and therefore your ground side would only be 3'6" high. But if you're far enough away, does it go by? It's a mess. So I don't have a preference other than just clarifying what should we use as the point of measurement, and staff, I know, wants that.
I did some research from other jurisdictions on how they measure ground signs, and most of them have a very, very confusing description, much like ours is currently, with the artificial grade, with the references to planter boxes and so on and so forth. It's very confusing, and again, I think we're going for simplistic, so whatever the commission recommends, we'll go with, but I know it's very confusing.
Where it happened, where it came up from, it primarily, the one I know is Sanger Wineries. So Sanger Wine goes in, and they're on the public sidewalk on Mission Drive, right? And then there's a, I don't know, 24-foot block wall, and then it's here. So is it 6'6" from there, or is it 6'6" from here? Now they're 9 feet in the air from the public sidewalk, which is 3 feet from the edge of their sign, not 50 feet back. And people were like, how did you guys approve that? And I'm like, I'm not in the BAR, I didn't approve it, so don't yell at me. But and that was confusing because it clearly states that if it's more than 3 feet, then you can use this, but if it's 18 inches, you have to use the public sidewalk. So I don't think staff cares. We just got to know what we want.
Actually, in talking with a couple people that were on the BAR, it was, their intent was to have it from the sidewalk, not from the planter. But when Sanger put it in, they did it from the top of the planter. Also turns out that they turned it 180 degrees from what had been approved as well.
And that probably focused people on what is our grade? Where should it be? How high should it be?
Isn't it a good idea to leave it
Doesn't have to be.
vague, though? Because then each situation is unique, and you can say, that's the grade we're going off of, that's grade for that particular location. Isn't it kind of better to leave it ambiguous?
It could be, except for then someone like Sanger has a sign that's 9'6" in the air. And we have no other ground signs that are over 6'6" throughout the city. Because I don't know how that happened. I'm not being critical of anyone. It's a little gray. As
But
to
it's a
which
higher
grade.
elevation, though, right? I mean, it's not like blocking the street view or anything, right?
Correct. It's not blocking the street view, but it's higher than,
It
it's a pole
violates
sign.
the-
It violates the code.
Code,
The code.
consistency.
Yeah, and
throughout
again,
the
it's
city.
going back to this being consistent on enforcement. The worst thing, of course, is we all think, I think, is being consistent on enforcement of, I'm treated the same as you are. I didn't get it because I'm Danish or because you don't like me, or whichever it is. You just want to be treated the same. Makes everyone feel good.
So, just my opinion, I think it should be from the sidewalk, not from the height of any plant or anything that may be in the front of the building. It should be from whatever the closest paved area is,
Paved area or a public sidewalk?
either one.
Okay.
I mean, if the nearest thing is a public sidewalk, then that would be the paved area. If it's a courtyard,
Then it's a
it would be-
private sidewalk.
right.
So public or private sidewalk, 6'6"? From public walkway or?
So in my case, where I have a sidewalk, a public sidewalk, and then the private sidewalk goes up like this, and then we put something out there, would you measure it? Where would you measure it? Because we actually have a pretty good incline.
Yeah. You don't have a wall, you've got a slope.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have a sign, but.
Yeah, but if you did.
Yeah.
Agreed. I went through this with Brecky's too, because here's a sidewalk and it sloped a little bit, and so I had to get 3 inches higher because then it's 6'6" from, I mean, believe me, it's a very technical thing. You're absolutely correct.
Isn't your sign on the top of the little pony wall there,
No,
where you step up
no,
to it?
it's a freestanding.
Oh, it is, okay.
But if I went from the pony wall patio, I could have gone up higher, but I didn't. I went off the public sidewalk because, okay, that's what we should do. I mean, I'm saying it with a question mark. I don't know. So we need to decide that.
So I think in David's case, if we say the public sidewalk or the public walkway, whatever, it would depend on where he put his sign. If it's on a slope, you would still measure from that paved area, 6'6" up, at the point where you want to put the sign, not someplace 10 or 15 feet away.
Agreed.
May I just suggest a thought? And I think you're probably going to get this back with various different thoughts, but you have a grade that you use for determining how tall a building is, and if the point of this is to have uniform height, and you've already got a grade that you use for figuring out how tall buildings are, couldn't you use that same grade, and then you would end up with uniformity of building heights and uniformity of sign heights and uniformity of everything else, and just always use the same datum point?
So what you're saying is in our design guidelines, we say 35 feet, I think, above finished grade. So use that finished grade as the point. Which in that case, Sanger's would be okay at 6'6" at their finished grade up. They're still at 9 or something silly, but they'd be at 6'6", and that would be okay. And you'd be okay at your 6'6", because that would be your finished grade. Almost floor of building, in a way. Write that up. I'll go for that. Just simple. I just want it simple.
And then everyone has the same size sign.
More consistency you can use across
Agreed.
reasons.
It's-
Agreed.
I like that.
Okay. So
And
what-
I'm
just
sorry, yes.
Before you move on, so are we just going to say 6 feet, 6 inches above finish grade? We're just going to put the word finish in there?
I don't have your design guidelines. I would go to your design guidelines and whatever words you use
That,
in your design guidelines for building height.
put that in.
Those same words.
And get a definition for finished grade in our definition also.
Right.
And we should do that for pole sign also, because we use the same thing when we go 13 feet. So just be consistent on pole and ground, same definition.
Okay?
Makes sense? I had a question on, under 11, 13, 15, prohibited signs.
11, 13, 15, wow. Okay.
And under benches, and I know we've kind of gone back and forth of benches, and I'm just, they're prohibited to have signs, it just says benches, signs on public or private property. Does it mean to say benches on public or private property, you can't have a sign? And which is fine with me, because we talked about that. If you allow signs on benches on private or public, then without an in memory of, which we've allowed, they're mobile signs. They're not mobile signs. They're off-premise signs. I get benches all over my square, Denmark Square, that has chomp on them all over, and they're allowed. So we have prohibited them. I just would like to see it a little clarified. It just says prohibited, and it says the following signs are prohibited, and it just says benches, signs on public or private property. I think you mean benches, no signs on benches on public or private property. Is that what I'm understanding? Otherwise, you just move it on private and just have signs all over them.
Yeah, I think that's what is intended here.
I think it is too. It just, again, clarification, because we had some discussion on that from folks. Then I think the two more things. One is simple. We go to our definition section, which is the very last section, and again, it's we have building facade is defined, and we've really taken building facade out. We want to say edge of building. But we had already talked about adding edge of building. It's just building facade, I think is, why is it in there? We're not using it any longer, so just
There's
eliminate
that word
that.
grade again.
I'm sorry?
There's that word grade again.
Yes, and wherever there's grade, it needs to say, hopefully we can just search it and find it. And just compliment staff on that temporary sign changes that you made, that you're allowing temporary signs for businesses that apply for, I can't remember what it was, 30 or 60 days, you must have your application in, which is a great way to, that was really one of the things that really sparked a lot of this, is people are trying to get open, they can't get their signs made, can't get temporaries, we really don't allow it, well, let's allow it, you know. So I thought that was, and that's over the counter, which I thought was very good. The only other thing, and it's a bigger thing, is this design guidelines under, are they flat letters, are they silhouetted, are they pinned off letters, are they carved letters? We don't have it in here, we just kind of do this 18th century vernacular thing, which has no definition at all, and I know Holly had pointed that out before. Do we define 18th century vernacular? And again, the design guidelines are really key to those type of fonts of letters and colors. To just say it's, look in the design guidelines is silliness, because the design guidelines are really not good. So we're not giving people a lot of direction on the sign. I mean, I would like to see personally, if what we feel is that if we need to have carved signs, in other words, raised letters or depressed letters with the background raised, or pinned off letters, that we say in here that all ground signs, pole signs, your primary sign, I would be hesitant to make your sign off a back parking lot be raised letters because it increases the price horrendously. But I would like to see us at least have the discussion on raised letters. I'll give you an example. Brecky's, I got my temporary signs up. They are plastic flat signs that Brian did. Not sharing anything. They cost me $2,000. And now I'm getting my permanent signs done with raised letters. It'll cost me $10,000. So it's $12,000 worth of sign. Happy to do it. I'm not happy to do it, but I'm happy to do it. It's okay. But I'm doing the raised letters on the signs. And I had to pay them more, a couple thousand more to get the temps up, which is great that I could get the temps up. He's working on them. I got my application in. He'll have those up whenever. We got them all approved at the BAR. I think that, and mine's a ground sign. It's very expensive, double-sided raised letters. I think we ought to have a discussion. Do we want raised letters in our design guidelines that, in our sign ordinance that says that your pole signs, ground signs, and your main signs ought to be, if it's on the main entrance, not side entrance, not parking lot. I'm up for anything. But right now, we're silent on it, and yet we're requiring people to do raised letters sometimes, and sometimes they're not. I have a ground sign at Chomp, not raised letters. How the heck did I get that 7 years ago? But yet I put one at the coffee shop, it's raised letters because that was required. Again, $5,000 sign. Okay with it, but it's just being consistent so that we know and we can defend it to people.
Yeah, it seems to be a preference of the planning commission, whichever planning, or BAR, on what their preference is.
And that's wrong.
And that's wrong. But in theory, what they're should be looking at is what is consistent with the overall architecture of the area in the building. And there may be some buildings with lots of windows and that raised letters don't make sense, whereas other buildings that are mostly wood outside, raised letters would make sense. So, but that's a judgment call, and I don't know if we want to take that judgment away.
And that's fine. And I might have gotten my Brecky's, I'm not complaining. I didn't even submit it as flat signs. I submitted it as raised because I just wanted to make a statement. I want raised letters. So I'm not blaming the BAR at all.
If we want to say a certain style is preferred, but I don't think we want to flat out and say, come out and say, it's always this, because one size never fits all.
I'm concerned that if we keep it subjective, then one team of the BAR might have one opinion, and then once there's some turnover, the second one may have a different opinion.
Exactly.
That's what's happened.
And so then we have some inconsistency. So I just worry about the subjectivity of it. That's kind of what concerns me, is that I like something, but then I'm off the bar, and then you come, and then you don't like it, and we don't have any consistency throughout the city.
So is this something that really needs to be in the sign ordinance, or does it need to be in the design guidelines?
Design guidelines for certain, but to me it sure seems like we're sitting here talking about 3-inch letters versus 4-inch letters versus 5-inch letters, and then we don't make any mention that it's got to be a 1/4-inch reveal or a shadowing of a 1/2 inch. So then you got to go, we're trying to simplify. So I got to get my design guidelines and look. Then I go to sign ordinance, and well, let me look at it over here. I see it, it's that. And a design guideline is in our design element of our general plan, which is a huge thing to change. As we're seeing, we haven't looked at it. Where this, we can change over a couple meetings and make we're more fluid to make changes. But again, I like the consistency too.
And then after you do all that, then it just depends on the mood or the style of the bar who's serving at that particular time.
Yes, right. Yes.
So maybe we should consider having a little
more
more drilled down.
So any suggestions on wording that we could put in there?
The only thing I threw out, and I'm guilty of it on Chomp, but it's a ground sign, is that maybe all ground sign and pole signs ought to have dimensions. And maybe your main entrance sign should. To require all is really tough, I believe. I mean, it's very expensive, as we know. But some of the important signs that we're trying to make the statement of maybe should be. I don't know.
Yeah, and there again, you bring up cost. Somebody who's a small business in a small building somewhere doesn't have a lot of money. You know, they could spend more money on the sign than they do on refurbishing their building.
But they probably don't have a pole or ground sign because they don't have the 50 or 100 feet of frontage, you know, by definition, you know.
Okay. So you're saying limit it to pole or ground
Pole and
signs?
ground and maybe
I see.
one sign. I don't know how you do it. I honestly don't, because I know where you're saying.
And what about hanging signs?
Right. Is it a flat sign, a hanging sign? At least one hanging and one pole, one hanging and one flat must be three-dimensional. I mean, I don't have an answer for it. I really don't. I just want to be consistent in what we come up with. I wouldn't mind pole and ground signs having to be nicer because they're more expensive, and they really are there.
And they're the ones that people see.
They're the ones that people
Yes.
see.
So we could do that, say pole and ground signs, and then leave the other signs. We could say maybe raised letters are preferred, and allow the applicant to discuss with the bar or staff
If it's appropriate.
if it's appropriate for their building.
I like that.
Works for me.
Commissioners, when an applicant does come in with their packet to submit for BAR for sign approval, I do look through the packet. I talk with the applicant. It's not just a drop off and then they leave. For the most part in the TRC, I do encourage the applicants to do a carved look, whether it's wood or if it's the foam. Typically, if I'm dealing with a sign contractor, they have already discussed the project with the applicant, the property owner, or the business owner, and when appropriate, we do allow the applicant to submit with a flat sign if it's facing a parking lot or facing an interior courtyard. The projecting signs or wall signs or the larger signs that are facing, say, public or Copenhagen or Alisal or the main streets of the TRC, we do encourage them to have that carved look. They can ask for the flatter look, but I do tell them that the BIR does prefer that look of the carved over the flat. But if they are in a like a off street that people aren't really going down, they might be able to get that approved by the BAR. So just wanted to let you guys know that.
That's kind of going on your point, Jack, that depending, leave that alone, but maybe pole and ground signs ought to have to be raised, pinned off letters or raised or depressed, so the background is raised, right? I mean,
Right.
either way, you just want dimension.
Right, yeah, three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional, but leave the rest up to your advice in the BAR, which is fine with me.
Again, on that note, we don't get a lot of requests for ground and pole signs. They're very expensive, and I just don't see them very often. I think the last ground sign that we approved was for Grappolo. No, I think Grappolo was after you.
Was it?
Or maybe not, or yours. But we don't get them that often, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we gone through all your comments?
Gone through my comments, yes.
Anybody else? And I'll go through mine.
I have a short one, I can say.
Okay, go ahead.
So-
No, go ahead if you have a short
I
one.
appreciate when the last meeting I requested that the tourist-related commercial TRC in parentheses, and you changed it, so now I can see it. Oh, that's what the TRC stands for. We say TRC all the time, but I'm like, I can never remember what the three letters mean. So, thank you.
Okay. So I've got a number of things that I discussed with Brenda. First one is the direction from the city council to put in the paragraph about individual lettering in the traditional old world style. And the way the only place that appears is under the sign types under, which one was it? Not the chalkboard, the menu display case, which is probably the one place where it doesn't belong. What I would like to suggest is that we move that either to the section of 1113.9 or very upfront in 1113.2, and not necessarily both places.
Commissioner Williams, under Section 1113.2, purpose and intent, there is an area that discusses the two distinctly different commercial areas. One is the TRC, one is the other commercial districts within the city. And there is a section that does say signage in this area, and I'm referring to the TRC, must be designed in character with the Old World vernacular. And Old World vernacular was added as a definition in the definition section. I don't know if you would like us to elaborate on that further in that section. Be happy to add any verbiage like you would recommend.
And then the definition that you guys have added, you've seen it, yeah, it just says a style supported by the Solvang design guidelines reminiscent of a type of font and use of color imitating that which was used in Northern European cities and towns in the 17 to 1900s, especially in Denmark. I know you were trying to come up with something. I don't have a better one, but I don't. What does that mean? I agree. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, we have a lot of block lettered. I don't know what an old world vernacular. I'm thinking of Burkholm's Bakery, Mortensen's Bakery. Certainly, they kind of have the curly Q cuts. A lot of the older ones, Olson's probably does too. Some of the old ones have it. Fudge Kitchen does, but a lot of the stuff in the last 10 years, you certainly don't. I certainly don't.
Well, I think what attracted people to this is, I'll read it. It says, within the TRC area, signs shall be designed to enhance the special character of the village and the buildings on which they are placed. Individual lettering in the traditional Old World style is preferred. That's not inconsistent with the definition that you have already in there.
So it says preferred.
Right.
Okay.
And then in the definitions, it talks about what Old World style is. So I think this is a little more explanatory than what's currently there.
And that was something city council was asking to add something in there about Old World style font.
Yes.
Well, it's got a timeline, 1700 to 1900. It's something you could look up or Google.
It doesn't say font, it just says Old World style.
And it does say preferred, not mandated.
Yes. So I propose inserting that into, I think the better place would be in 1113.2. And just reword where we're talking about the vernacular and take that out and insert this.
Well, and in fact, in 1113.2, that's page 2.
Yes.
And then the second paragraph, signage in this area must be designed in character. But you're saying that's too harsh. It ought to say is preferred to be designed.
No, what it says is signs shall be designed to enhance the special character of the village.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on that one.
And it says that in H. Why was that in H and not in the other ones, Brenda? Do you know why?
I'm sorry?
The, what Jack is talking about, that subsection signage guidelines on H.
Why was it put on display cases?
Yeah,
and
but
not-
why is it not on other? Shouldn't that be just throughout?
Well, I think it should come out of display cases. I think it can be in here once, because one of the things we're trying to do is get rid of redundancy. So if we put it in right up front, we're on record, it's there, and it applies throughout then. And just make the appropriate definition in the definition section.
I agree with that. I think it makes sense. what
So
you're saying.
definitely take it out of H.
Yes.
Yes, because that's silly. It's the only spot it's in. I
Exactly.
get it.
That doesn't make sense. And
Right.
put it in a more prominent position.
Right. But then, Jack, you're saying again, it's paragraph 3 under 1113.2, so it's page 2, first paragraph's on page 1. Then third paragraph starts with the city has several.
Yeah,
That's
and-
the paragraph where you want to insert
Well, I'm
this
saying,
wording.
take out the sentence that, it's the second sentence in that paragraph, starting with signage.
Yep, because it says it must.
Must be designed with character.
And we're saying not must, we are, what's the wording again, I'm sorry? Preferred.
Preferred.
Shouldn't it be in one of those bullet points, A, B, C, D, E, F? Like maybe just add it to A on 1113.2?
Possibility.
Oh,
Take that verbiage that within the TRC and add it to A. Or incorporate it somehow in A.
where it's with the A through
Was
F.
it A, maintain and improve aesthetic environment and overall community appearance to foster the city's ability to attract sources of economic development and growth.
And then your statement, Jack, from the city?
And then put in, within the TRC area, signs shall be designed to enhance the special character of the village in the buildings on which they are placed. Individual lettering in the traditional Old World style is preferred.
Or it could be its own bullet point even.
Yeah, no, I like that. You put it under, yeah, make it
F or
A or
G
F
or
or
something.
G or whichever. But
Or
then
make
we,
it one all by itself if you want.
yeah, make it all, but then we need to take the sentence out in the second paragraph that says signage in there must be designed. We take that sentence out and add a bullet point that you've got from the city
Yeah,
council.
put that in or in either place.
Bullet point's fine. Yeah, I mean, a letter.
So just to clarify, is it shall be designed with the old world, or
It
designed
says-
with old world is preferred?
I use
Old
preferred
World
for-
style is preferred.
Preferred.
I'll give you this copy of this email that I have.
Because again, it does give the BAR their leeway. It's preferred. However, if you're on First Street, you know, and you've got a shoe repair place, maybe that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna take out that signage in the area must be,
Design.
take that, to the word vernacular, take that sentence out. And then, is there agreement that we would make another bullet point with this statement?
Another
Or-
letter,
Or
yes.
add this in there?
No, I think another letter. I think that's,
Yeah.
I agree.
And this will be specific to the TRC.
To the
Correct.
TRC, it says TRC. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to do that, because it would violate other things that we say about non-TRC
Right,
areas.
right,
So
right.
That's a good catch, Jack. I can tell you crunched this one really good.
pass that to David. I think you may have a copy of that anyway. Okay. Moving backwards for a minute to the staff comments in talking about the awnings, windows, lettering, accessory signs, chalkboards, and umbrellas. I think we agreed to allow that to be handled by the staff and not have to go to the BAR. Is that correct? And we had a little discussion of that when she brought it up, but I'm not sure we actually gave her any direction.
Is that, did that get changed I'm gonna look at the chart.
No, the chart wasn't changed.
Gotcha, because that's where I was seeing it.
The chart would be changed based on what we decide with this statement.
And could you make that statement again? What was
It
it?
says, "These types of signs traditionally come from staff approval," and had already been to the bar. And so the types of signs are the awnings, window lettering, accessory signs, chalkboard signs, and umbrellas. And in the chart, they all say, yes, it has to go to the BAR. And what's being proposed here is we're going to say, no, it doesn't have to go to the BAR, that the staff can approve those unless there's some thing which they always have the option to do.
So if we look at the chart for the TRC, and we start with, gosh, I don't know, 6 pages in.
If I can interrupt Commissioner Peterson, again, I have not updated the chart.
Oh, I know, I'm just trying to say
Okay.
which ones I'm gonna circle and
Understood.
put no.
Here.
to be consistent with that.
Yeah,
So
it's in, what, 11, 13, 7.
So the TRC chart, so awning signs would be a no?
Yes, awning signs, and then on the next page, window lettering.
Window lettering would be a no. Accessory
Chalkboard.
sign is already a no. Chalkboard would be a no.
And umbrellas would be a no.
And umbrellas would be a no. So you guys are following that under that chart? Yeah, the two-page thing? So it's yes wall, yes projecting, yes hanging, then it's no awning, no window, no accessory is already no.
Right.
Symbol sign, that's a yes? Chalkboard
No, symbol sign would be yes.
would be yes. Chalkboard is a no. Menu is yes. Umbrellas is a no.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the same thing would apply in the next chart, which
Yes,
is
that's
outside.
outside of the TRC.
So, and it would be the same items because they're the same, basically the same chart. So, does everybody agree that that's a reasonable thing to do?
I do. I would just say that I wouldn't be opposed to having the menu display case as well.
Agreed, that seems pretty small, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would just.
It's almost along the chalkboard.
I'd say no bar, right.
The only one I have an issue with is, just for discussion, is umbrellas. I always thought it was funny that you had to go to the BAR, to get approval to paint your building, to get an awning approved, but yet you could go put 500 umbrellas up of fuchsia. I mean, you could. I remember my sisters had an ice cream shop over there where Dana Volks is, and they had pink flurry umbrellas, and they shut them down and said, change those. They rightfully should have. They wouldn't listen to me. So it was very good that we got that changed. But the point is, you could, if we don't have umbrellas and umbrella signs to the BAR, umbrellas is a big deal, much bigger than a hanging sign that's 7 foot square. An umbrella is, by definition, is 8 foot by 8 feet. It's 64 square feet each, and they can be pink or yellow. Now, staff has to approve them, but staff's board that day or doesn't care. Then we get a color that's approved by staff, and the next person down the road doesn't. Umbrellas are a big deal, and I remember when we had this discussion, this goes way back, how it even came out that symbols on umbrellas had to get approval, is that we had a restaurant in town having Takata beer on every single one of them, and people got upset. We said, wait, they got Carlsberg beer over there. You can't say no to a Mexican beer and yes to a Danish beer. That's freedom of speech. Well, wait, you got to control it all. You got to be consistent. What are we going to say? And we said, okay, half umbrellas could be logoed, not all. And then of those, you have to take the logo, and that's a 50% towards your sign. So it limited how many logoed umbrellas we got, and it really took it down. You didn't have the Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola signs, umbrellas everywhere. I would hate to see us roll back and have staff approving umbrellas, which is a big deal. It's not 2 umbrellas. It can be, Charlie Greenwald's Paula's has 15. I've got 20. I don't know. I mean, we have tons of umbrellas all over. You've got a ton at your restaurant. And I think it's a good thing to have BAR approve umbrellas, because we have them approve a 7-foot sign. How do we not have them approve umbrellas? Everything else I agree with, but not the umbrellas.
I agree with that.
It's my opinion.
Especially since you can see an umbrella from so far away. That makes such a big statement from.
Flapping and big.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I would put
And
the
it would-
menu display case in there, and I would remove the umbrellas.
That would be my choice, too.
I don't feel as passionately about the umbrellas. I just don't, but I hear your point.
You have any thoughts?
Yeah, as long as it's not like a big advertising, we're not Los Angeles, so.
Okay, I think, I agree. I think that umbrellas probably no, because of the colors and the design and our desire to keep everything in the old world style, make sure that the umbrellas are consistent with the building color and the location. Maybe that's something that BAR should really make the decision on.
But I'd like to be clear that when David's or my umbrellas or your umbrellas are worn out, we can go replace them with the same, because you got to go back to BAR for the exact same color. That's really tough, because sometimes they blow over and break in a windstorm and you can't get to a BAR. You know, so hopefully there's somewhere in there that we talk about umbrellas can continue to be replaced, repaired, I guess. Maybe that goes without saying.
In fact, there's, if you go back and, if I remember correctly, umbrellas are permitted, umbrellas shall be maintained in good condition and shall not be torn or faded.
There you go.
So so that answers your question. Okay, so are we clear on that point, Brendan? Then the second thing, at the end of that same paragraph, said staff removed the reference to murals, painted window borders, as they are not signs. Staff would like to add these to a more appropriate place in the code and add them to the design guidelines update. In principle, well, first of all, murals was not taken out, but the more important thing to me is I don't think we should take this out unless we are at the same time adding it into the design guidelines. Otherwise, between the time this goes into effect and the time whenever the design guidelines get updated, we have no regulation on this. So at some point, maybe we revise this to take that out when we do the design guidelines. But I don't think now is the proper time, because I don't think we can do both. I don't think we can update one little section of the design guidelines to accommodate this now.
Jack, are you just talking about the murals?
Murals and the painted window borders.
Gotcha.
If you look at, you have to go back to.
The old one.
The old one to see it.
I would agree with you. I mean, the funny thing is, we make, we make the BR approve painting of a wall and painting of half timbers and painting of windows, and then you don't have to have approval for a mural, which there's no sign size definition. It could be anything, or you could then just paint the window a yellow stripe on the inside.
Right.
Seems inconsistent. I would agree with you on that.
We don't have any murals in town, do we?
One on the gas station. There is one down at Jimmy's station on the wall. You see it as you're going out of town. I
Really?
think a 4-H club painted it, or somebody. It's
don't
it's cute. It's of Solvang. But you're right. But we've always controlled murals, and this took murals out to simplify. And Jack's point is well taken. We tell you can't do that yellow on that wall, yet you can put a 40-foot mural of your naked grandmother. I don't know. You know. But
We can't have murals with a half timber look in the TRC. I mean, you're gonna
Right.
make the look go away.
Right.
Okay, so we'll leave that in for now. So that would be 14 would stay there, and you would add 15 back in.
I would agree with that. Hadn't thought about it, but yeah.
Okay. On 1113.6, item 13, and I've discussed this with Brenda already, and she's going to change it. It's just that the section numbers are wrong. They should be 7 and 8 instead of 8 and 9. And I also suggested on, under B, item 2, small b, it says in computing the amount of square footage allowed per business, that we insert the word signage before square footage, in computing the amount of signage square footage allowed per business.
Yep.
Okay, on the next page, again, the reference It says 1113.7, it should be 1113.6, and the 6 in front of it should not be there. And in the interest of removing redundancy, I suggested that we remove the next thing in caps where it says standards for exterior commercial signs in the TRC, because that happens to be basically the name of the section, 1113.7, sign standards within the TRC. I mean, it's not hurting anything there, but it seemed redundant to me.
Mhm.
Okay. You can feel free to
No,
discuss
I
any of this.
agree.
or-
No, those are consistencies that.
You're a very good editor, Jack.
Yeah.
And then the same thing in 1113.8, where it says standards for exterior commercial, take that out. Because 1113.8 says the same thing. We talked about the yeses and nos. And one thing I brought up was starting 1113.9. The formatting is completely different from the rest of the, and Brenda says that that's already going to be addressed. So I'm not sure I need to go through all those things, but the formatting with the chart, and then the wall sign A in the middle instead of, just consistency to make what I consider a quality document that we can all be proud of. And so that applies to that whole section, 1113.9, and I think 1113.10, the same thing. And also, in the charts, like if you look at the A where it says wall signs, it gives the definition of the wall sign. That same thing is repeated in definitions in the back. I don't know that we need it in both places.
Yep.
And that applies for the whole section. 1113.9, 1113.10, all those same comments apply. And then we talked about in the display case, taking out the old world style, and that's going to be up front now. Just making everything consistent, umbrellas, ground signs, all the same stuff. Go through that quickly, I don't really need to say it once. In 1113.10, item G, appeals, it talks pursuant to Title I, Chapter 6. My question was, Title I, Chapter 6 of what? It says the code. And so we're talking about city code. But I think, and I talked to Brenda about this, about making that apparent that we're not talking about this document.
They were talking about the big code.
Right, because there is no Title I, Chapter 6.
Correct.
And then 1113.11, again, the formatting. And what I suggested here was, and we can discuss this, is under 1113.11, getting rid of the charts and making bullet points, but deleting item A, 1113.11A, because it's saying the same thing as the title, and taking item B, delete that altogether, and take that opening paragraph and make that item A. So it'll say 1113.11A, the following signage requires land use clearance permit from the planning, et cetera, et cetera. So that would all move up there, and then you'd have items 1 and 2, grand opening, temporary signs for new businesses, and then take the stuff that's in the chart and make those bullet points under those 2 headers
Instead of a chart.
instead of a chart. And that would make it consistent with the rest of the document. 111313, was it C5? Again, it just says Title I, Chapter 6, the same comment as earlier. And it appears a couple other places as well.
For your appeal, yeah.
And I've pointed that out to Brenda, and I think she'll take care of that. Next thing is in the next section, which is 111314. I got confused because all of a sudden we're talking about city building officials. It's in there half a dozen times. It turns out we do have a city building official, that it's a real title of a real person. So what I suggested was that we include city building official in the definitions. Because when I read this, I was saying, well, shouldn't this be director of planning or a designee?
If I might suggest, what we can do is just reference the building code section of the municipal code where it defines the building official for purposes of not having definitions that may be different in different code sections.
Okay,
Different titles.
and if you do that, you know, you take out the city building official, I mean, it would mean rewording all of this. So it would be 2, 3 in item B. So there's what, I don't know how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instances where you'd have to. So maybe the thing to do would be to put that reference up front somewhere rather than keep putting it in time after time in each paragraph or each sentence where it appears. Just reference it once. You already got that, I don't need to bring it up. Under 111318, overall sign plans, item 3A, it says, under canopy arcade and projecting signs shall not exceed 6 square feet.
I think it's 7, isn't it?
And I'm saying it's inconsistent with what we have in, what is 1113.7, I think, where we say 7 feet. So what this is saying is when somebody puts together a sign plan, they have to base it on a 6-foot sign, but once it's built, somebody can come in and put in a 7-foot sign. So I think we should either change them to both 7 feet or both 6 feet.
7 is kind of what we've done consistently throughout the whole signs.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
7.
up front,
I'd keep
yeah.
it 7. But I think that is a slip up, or we just missed the 6 and the 7 20 years ago. Carried it forward.
Okay, I think that may be all I have. Yep, end of my comments.
I had one more comment. I thought, well, maybe we didn't talk about it. We have a definition for monument sign, but I don't see monument sign, and maybe I'm missing it, throughout the whole entire chapter. And the definition for monument sign is C definition of ground sign. So I don't know why we have monument sign even listed. So maybe we just take monument sign out, because we don't have one. We do ground and we do pole, but no monument. So anyway, that would be a suggestion. It's like a circular definition, right? I've got, but I don't want to interrupt. You guys go. I already had my chance.
I'm through mine.
Okay.
About it.
I meant to ask this earlier. If somebody, and this came up before, we have these non-current signs, we have these signs that then we can go enforce, and we can find them, and we can take them down if they're non-current and all this enforcement. Yet if somebody puts up a sign that is not in keeping with what they got approved for, as an example, Sanger sign, which is 9 feet in the air, 8.5 feet in the air. It's supposed to be 6'6" at the most, and it's way above that. But then if I say something, people go, well, it's already up. We can't do anything about it. I'm like, well, really? So you just do an illegal one for a month or 2 months, or so? How long is it that you're just grandfathered in? And I'm not picking on them. They're good friends of mine and stuff. I'm just pointing out the fact that we have, someone puts up a sign that's an illegal sign, or it's not illegal, it's wrong sized, it's wrong location, it's wrong, you said even turned 90 degrees. We probably ought to have somewhere where the city has the right to go in there and say you can't have that up there. And I think I mentioned it to Brenda 2 years ago, and she said, I've never been in a place where you can put a sign up and no one ever comes over to measure, did you actually do the sign, what you said you were going to do? And is it really 7 feet off the sidewalk, or is it going to hit someone in the head, public or private, or 4 feet out from the edge of building? We ought to have a follow-up on that. We're trusting everyone to be good and honest, and then 6 months, 3 months, 2 months later, you drive by, you see it, and you go, that's wrong. And then you go to city, and city goes, well, you got to sign a complaint. You go, I don't want to sign a complaint. I know those people. Well, then they're up, they're in, they're done. So we have this abandoned, non-current, unsafe sign section, yet we don't have anything in there that says unpermitted or permitted but not correctly permitted, or I don't know how to word that. It's more of a legalese thing, but it ought to be in there somewhere. Otherwise, you violate the law. You just keep violating the law long enough, and you get away with it.
Is there some kind of audit that happens on a annual basis or biannual basis when the city building official goes through and checks these signs and walks the streets, or is there an audit that happens? I'm just curious.
There was.
There's supposed to
A while
be.
back there was.
What
Yeah.
happened?
There was a code section or a section in the sign ordinance that referred to staff doing a sign inventory, and to date, I've never participated in that inventory, and I believe one of my coworkers said that she did do an inventory once, but it was several years ago.
That may be something that we look into and maybe even include here, because for the consistency and the continuity that we're looking for, certainly audits would be an appropriate thing, I think.
Well, we always talked about if they just went around and had a file in every business and took a picture, all the signs that they have, and put it in a file. So then if a new sign goes up, you go, did that one get approved? It wasn't there 6 months ago or 3 months ago or a month ago. Because everyone goes, no, it's been there forever. And even if it's been there, what does that mean, it's been there forever? It means it's okay? Yeah, it doesn't make it right. So that gets back to a city council, though, who has kind of given marching orders, I believe, to staff and to others.
Enforcement officer.
Enforcement, we're not going to
do
do.
code enforcement officer, don't we?
We hired her on purpose a couple of years ago, and we've kind of backed off that. She'll go if it's, and I don't want everyone turning everyone in and having everyone go crazy over signs. It just seems like it's a bit of the Wild West. It used to be the Wild West, then we came down super hard, and then it kind of got a sweet spot, and it was just really nice. And then it kind of has gotten to the Wild West again, where, fine, just do it. So that's probably for a different discussion. But it sure seems like somewhere in here on this non-current, abandoned, or unsafe signs, we had to have something about that when a sign goes up, that the city staff shall go to you're done. I mean, gosh, you have to do a final walkthrough on a building, for goodness sake, when you put in display cases. Yet you can put your signs up, and we never do a final walkthrough check on it. It's anyway, I don't know.
That is something that staff raised to me when I arrived, that after signs were approved and sort of everything's stamped and done, it's kind of like, okay, good luck with your sign. So as we're doing overall process improvements, that is something that's on the list, long list, but it is something that we've talked about and is something that I would like to implement in terms of closing out these files, so that, as you say, I mean, we approve a sign, we ought to be making sure it matches what was approved, as well as from a safety perspective. So we have some of these signs that hang off the blade signs that are coming off the buildings and hanging there. We ought to make sure that is to some sort of standard that it's going to carry the weight of that sign, not just couple of small screws into the side of the building, and okay, well that'll hold that sign up there until the first wind comes along and blows it off. So,
Yeah. Well, if you read that section where it talked about the building official, that's what that person is supposed to be doing.
So leave it to another day. I mean, you guys are working on it. It's in there, we're just, yeah, and that's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The only other question I had was, I know we were trying to simplify, and I know that Holly was pretty proud that she cut some pages out, but the pages that got taken out that I thought were pretty important were the pictures. In each of our descriptions, we had a picture, and it had a picture of what a wall sign was, a monument sign. I think it had St. Anne's Real Estate as their example. And then they had a picture of what a hanging sign and a flat sign. And it had different pictures throughout so that you could just go through it when it had the section and go, that's what they mean by a menu display case. That's what they mean. And it was so easy for an applicant to be able to do it. Talking to the sign makers, they say the same thing. They've got to take their applicants into town and go, that's what they mean by a menu display case. Or they go take their own pictures and have their own photos. I don't know why we took those out and didn't just, but there must have been a good reason. I just don't know what it was.
Most of the photographs that were in the zoning ordinance were older signs, and I believe we had discussions about revamping a new brochure that would talk about give just a handout to somebody that had a definition of each sign with a new updated photograph of a more modern sign that was around town, just a fresher look of that brochure. And I think that's something we were going to talk about further.
Okay, good. That would be really helpful also. But I might add, to me it ought to be, if it's a real example that staff believes is good, again, just one document, not having to go that, and did you get the brochure, and look at the design guidelines over here, and you're going design guidelines, brochure, and this. Just, I was really well done if you look at the old one. I thought maybe the pictures needed to be updated, but it had a picture of what a ground sign was or a hanging sign.
Even the pictures, as long as they're depicting the proper thing that's consistent with the ordinance, I don't think it matters how old they are. I think we discussed this at the last meeting as well, and I think the feedback from, I think Holly at the time, was that her thought was to make that an addendum to this, that it would be one document, but not inserted in where there's a wall sign and a picture of a wall sign, but have an addendum that comes as an attachment to
the definition at the end.
Yeah. So that it would be all one document.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hard pressed if someone asks me what an under arcade sign is, I have no idea. Under canopy sign, but I see, Rasmussen has one. That's the under arcade sign. I get it then. I mean, there's a lot of nuances out there.
Picture is worth 1,000 words.
It is. So if we can try to do that, if it's an addendum, if not inserted in, that's some way. It's just not a
She's not
separate
here
document.
anymore.
As part of our as part of our strategy to really just make this as easy on folks as possible, what we were going to be doing is, as we update all of our documentation, we were creating that addendum that was going to just be a real simple booklet that basically has the definition of a sign with the picture of the sign. The goal here was to remove it just from the municipal code, since it was sort of wonky having pictures within the municipal code, but still have that something that would go then on our website. It would be in literature that's available over the counter, so when someone comes in and talks to staff about their sign ideas or what they're looking for, then that it's there and it's available, and it makes it, the pictures are nice and easy. And then we would be walking through that process in a way that's nice and easily explainable on the website as well, which would then have those pictures and not be literally in the physical municipal code, to make it as easy and user-friendly as possible without having it have to be a part of the code document.
Makes sense.
Anything else? I have one more thing to, I don't know if you've had a chance to read Brian's letter from 805. Do we need to discuss anything in there, or are there any things that he's brought up that you feel is important that we haven't?
He had actually
covered?
called me, and the one I said, why are you increasing the sign of a ground sign from 30 to 32? And he said, just because it's a 4x8 sheet of plywood and foam, because the foam is so expensive. But, I mean, that was his preference. I don't, you're wasting material is what he's saying. It seems silly, to do it. That was, and then the rest of them, I thought we kind of handled a lot. We talked a lot of it, it seemed to me.
Okay. I just didn't, since he went to the trouble of sending us that email, I didn't want him to feel like we ignored him.
Well, I mean, and if it really made sense to go to 32 feet instead of 30 square feet, 4 by 8 or 3'8" by 4, I mean, to me, it doesn't matter if 32 is a better sense. I'm fine with changing it to 32. It's just an easy measurement, but I don't know how y'all feel, you know. It is 30. It's 50 outside and 30 in,
Yes,
TRC, I think.
so.
Essentially, his last point about, he says, the ordinance needs to be written in a fashion that can be followed objectively rather than subjectively by today's BARS members, and future BAR members. So it's interesting that even he is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
He has the same thoughts anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Objective versus subjective.
Yep.
You can get a grant for not having stuff go to landfills if you go to 32.
Exactly. I don't know. If we leave it at 30, I don't really have a preference one way or the other. Yeah. I think he was throwing it out there to just save material, but leave it at 30? Make it 32? I'd probably go to 32, just if he's asking for it and he's the guy that makes a lot of the signs.
There doesn't seem to be any,
Plus or
I mean,
minus.
is there a reason why it was 30 inches before?
A dart at a board 30 years ago?
Somebody just picked it up, and the plywood came in 5 by 6 sheets or something.
Yeah. Well, I'd change it to 32 square feet. None of mine are, but it's fine with me.
Leave
Unless
the
somebody
other at
else is
50
strong.
instead of 48. So we want to change it to 32? Or?
How do you guys feel? Is that a,
I don't care either way.
I-
It doesn't.
Was it, I mean, that sounds pretty big, 32 square feet, or is it?
well, it's 30 now, and he was just, you know, leave it at 30. It doesn't matter. We'd have to change a lot of stuff. If none of us really care, leave it at 30. So if Brian's watching at home, tough.
Okay, we'll leave it at 30. So,
Yeah, he's going to charge us anyway for it.
I think we're done with the sign regulation. Do we need to have a motion to approve this with the changes as we've discussed?
Can we recap the changes as I
That
have
was
them
gonna-
written?
Depending on your
It's a
answer.
lot to swallow.
Let's roll the clock back an hour.
Right.
You need to borrow
I'm
a
going
check
to
for the
go
week.
quickly. Add a definition of edge of building. Clarify language in 11-13-6 in regard to measurement. Awning, make all, did you guys want to change the awnings from 5 feet and 3, or 5 inches and 3 inches?
No, we
Didn't want to change that.
Leave it.
Chalkboard and menu display cases may be for salons and restaurants. Adding that measurement will be calculated for ground and pole signs at finished grade. Add a definition of finished grade. Clarify benches, add some verbiage about benches. Remove the definition of building facade, add a definition of edge of building. Adding the section in 1113-2 in regard to old world style preferred, and we have all of that email and language. Umbrellas shall be reviewed by BAR, but the other items like chalkboard, window lettering, awnings, etc., can be reviewed at the staff level. Leave the reference to murals, window borders, etc., in the code until we update the sign design guidelines. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Let me see. There was a lot of formatting and just small cleanup code references from Jack. in 111311, delete section A and rewrite it to, and add bullet points with focusing on B.
Right.
Referencing in 111314 to the building official, adding reference to the building code section in the zoning ordinance in regard to the building official and building department. In regard to under canopy signs, they're referencing 6 square feet, change it to 7. Remove the definition of monument signs. And I believe that's it.
Wasn't it, did we raise letters on pole and ground signs, or dimensional, or whatever, pinned or raised?
I think
Did
you,
we-
I
did
think
we
you landed on
conclude that?
three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional on pole and ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Under-
So was that all consistent? Because you were taking copious notes too.
Yes, yeah, that was consistent. So I have, in effect, there were modifications, so I'll just reiterate as well. 1113.6B2, make language easier for the frontages. 1113.9J1, add language of at finished grade for design guidelines, as well as 1113.9K. 1113.15A4, clarify benches on public or private property would be prohibited. 1113.19, building facade defined, even though that's not needed in that point, so we can remove that. Raised letters under 1113.19, we should add that three-dimensional for ground or pole signs.
Shall be.
Shall be, yes. Well, I had that it was preferred.
Preferred, I think, is what we
Preferred.
said.
I thought you'd landed on
Oh, wait.
preferred.
On the raised letters?
On the three-dimensional, under adding raised letters for ground sign or pole signs.
We said
Three-dimensional
preferred.
signs.
I thought it was a shall,
You want shall?
I thought it was a shall.
Shall.
and
but preferred on the
preferred
others.
On the others.
Oh, got it, yeah.
We
Okay.
kind of split the hairs there, yeah.
Thank you. Justin was happy with the TRC being identified.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1113.9H, remove Old World style since we were using Old World vernacular elsewhere. 1113.2, add a G to add a statement specific to the TRC. 1113.7 and 8, no bar approval for awning signs, window letter, chalkboards, menus, and then umbrellas would stay requiring bar approval. 1113.6, 1.5 would be basically adding back what was Q as now 15. 1113.7, remove language standards for the formatting items, as Brenda pointed out, same with 1113.8, and then 1113.6B, add the word sign before square footage. And then I have a variety of other notes that I started just taking within the ordinance as well on a variety of things.
And 1113.2, the purpose intent, when you said G, just make sure, what was that section that came into the shadow box section or the case? What was that language?
13.2G, let me get there.
thought that was here on the.
Wasn't I? Menu display case, that's the one, they were gonna use that language from the menu display case.
Right.
Oh,
right.
take that out.
Yeah.
Take that
Take
out of
that out
there.
and move it to 13.2
Yeah,
to make it G.
he's got that.
Okay, I just wanna
Yes.
make sure it was,
Yeah, add G there.
yeah.
Move approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and approved to move forward with this, including the comments that we've made.
As well as if it could include the exemption from CEQA and approving the resolution recommending approval to the city council.
Yes.
You want to amend your?
Yes, I amend my motion to include exemption of CEQA and moving the resolution to city council for their approval.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Approved, 5-0. Okay, do we have any other things that we want to discuss tonight? Anything Commissioners'
I mean,
comments on,
the only question I have, I mean, it's the elephant in the room, so we don't have a planning director. I know no one's gonna make comments on it, but we don't have, do we know if we're searching for one, we're gonna search for one, we're not sure, or there's no comment at this time?
I'm looking at all the options right now. For the time being, I'm filling in and assisting the planning and building departments as they need, questions on stuff, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Scott, anything?
Thank you, I'm good.
Justin?
I don't have any other questions.
David? No, I don't either. Comments from planning director?
None right now.
Okay, well, then I think we're done. This meeting is adjourned.